back. Good to have you back on, Andrew. Very grateful that you can spare the time with us. I thought I'd start this quickly with just a little roundup of the last 7 days, and sort of a bit of some of the publicity that's gone on more recently. So in the last 7 days, SWC have bought 45 Bitcoin. They've raised £13.4 million. With the OTCQB listing has gone live, and the share price peaked today at 149.76p. How are you feeling about all that, Andrew? Because that's one hell of a week.
Yeah, so since we started life as a public company, which was 6-7 weeks ago, was it 5 weeks? I'm not really sure how long it's been, to be honest. Feels like quite a long time. We've just tried to get better every single week. It's been a good week. We had a really well supported raise a week ago, as you say. We're continuing with the strategy. Everything's going well. On the web design side of things, we're really busy. The acquisition stuff is all under control, as one would expect. The treasury side of things is, I believe it's being deployed in the way that I think is right. So we're getting there.
We're just getting started, aren't we?
Yeah. I've said that quite a few times, actually. When I put the slides together for Vegas, I obviously had to come up with a title, and I'll probably still be saying that in 6 months, because that's still quite young, isn't it? If you're trying to build a really big, successful company that's respected globally, then 6 months into it, 9 months into it, 12 months into it is I think we can still use the same phrase. I was really pleased with the OTC listing, because we announced fairly early on that we had started that process, and Jamie, who works in the business, has worked really hard on that. There's a lot of, as with everything in a public company, there's a lot of forms that need to be completed, and he pushed really hard on that. He's got a really good relationship with the OTC people, and I was so pleased that we got it in, a week, 2 weeks ahead of schedule. It was quite nice as well, because it was quite unusual with the way that the stock was already trading in the US, but being relatively hard for people to buy. But that's quite unusual. A smaller UK company, even with an OTC listing, may not get that much volume, but to have that before and then to see yesterday, I worked it out last night, and I think about 40% or something like that, not quite 50% of the volume was on the American market. And then, I was getting ready to do this podcast, which will come out on Monday, last night, 10 o'clock our time it was, so 10 till 11 o'clock, and then I had a telephone call afterwards. So I have been putting the hours in. Everyone will be pleased to hear, I hope. I got a message from someone saying, have you seen this YouTube video? And there's more stuff just coming out all the time. So I'm quite looking forward to actually 2:30 today to see what the volume's like in America today. If you remember back to when we started trading in the UK, you probably had a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, when the volume builds and stuff. And I've got no reason to think that the US will be any different to that. And that will really help in terms of our sort of developing global audience and stuff. And on that note, this morning I saw the community has got past 1,000 visitors, members. So that's growing. So everything is heading in the right direction, and all we can do as a business is keep sticking to the mission, which hasn't actually changed since we started. Keep trying to do our best for everyone, which is obviously what we're doing.
Yeah, and kind of on the publicity front, just some names that I've noticed down over the last just over 24 hours, maybe. Mainly, I think, due to the OTCQB listing going through. Adam Livingston's done an amazing video that is so bullish. hard. I had to pinch myself. And I'm really glad I waited till this morning to watch it, because I don't think I'd have slept last night. Adrian Morris has given us a mention, Marty Party, Micro to Macro, MSTR True North name dropped us at the beginning of theirs. And obviously, Tim Kotzman's getting you back on. And I think he said it's the 16th that's coming out. So that's one for everyone to keep an eye open for. I mean, what's it like seeing, I don't know, the reach of SWC expanding, particularly over the water in America, but just, it's the exponential growth in community members kind of seems to be matching the Bitcoin accumulation strategy and the share price. It's all kind of number go up. What does that feel like?
Yes, it's obviously pretty cool. It's nice for lots of people to see all the work that we've put in, and why we're doing it, and everyone to understand everything. It's pressure's the wrong word, I suppose, because there's more eyes looking at you. But it doesn't really matter whether you've got 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 people looking at you. If you're delivering the same strategy, i.e., the business is the same as it was when we IPO'd, albeit with quite a bit more capital. You just have to have a stick to the mission. It's no more complicated than that, really. The numbers are different. You buy, for example, on the treasury side, you buy more Bitcoin, than you bought, sort of a month ago, in a day, for example. And, but we've got all the business processes. The business processes have been geared for, without changing a single thing, probably 10 times as much money is flowing through to sort of handle those things. And we also have already spoken to the people that will help us when we get past that particular, stage as well. So it's great though, like take the videos that you mentioned, all those names, like what people have to remember is that, I haven't met a lot of these people before. I've never spoken to some of these people. These are all people like you and I that love the space, that see that we're doing, an okay job, that, like to talk about it. And it's really nice to see, other like-minded people, think that you're doing an okay job. So it's pretty cool.
So on the basis of doing an okay job, which is very British of you, I'd just like to share this chart because it's my favorite. Does the orange line look like an okay job to you?
Well, it could be steeper, couldn't it? Yeah, I think I'm obviously happy with the way that we're executing the strategy. I'm not disappointed. I'm not trying to say that I'm disappointed. I'm obviously not disappointed. I think that everything's gone okay so far, but the more important thing is what happens next. So if I keep doing what I've been doing, then I'll still be saying that I've done an okay job. I don't see anything changing on that trajectory. What line would we have to get past? It's about 500, isn't it, the red line above us? So, obviously that's the way I look at things. I look at, as I've said to you before, I look at targets, milestones, continuous improvement, and all those things. So, I think the target is pretty clear for everyone to see, the immediate target. And then, where we go from there, but at the same time as saying that, if it took me an extra half a week to do something, it probably wouldn't actually affect the stats that everyone likes looking at for us. So, we just keep steering the ship in the right direction, and it should be okay.
Okay.
That chart though, that's one of my favorites ones as well. And obviously selfishly, I do love the Webley tracker. I think Nick's done an amazing job of those tools, and purely as a developer speaking, I think they're really, really smart. Yeah, that's my favorite one. Needs more orange though, doesn't it?
It definitely needs more orange. I'm sure there's more orange to come. Just on kind of stats and things, before we dive into the questions. So this was from Crabapple on X yesterday. So if we were listed on the LSE, our turnover and GDP of shares traded, we would have ranked number 108th. That's a pretty impressive stat for a... Oh, I'm not sharing the right... Oh, damn it. Let's just get that right. I'm just going to share the window that way. Okay. So, yeah, 108th in share turnover yesterday, if we were listed on the LSE. That's not bad for a company that IPO'd 6-7 weeks ago and is on Aquis, right?
Yeah, it's not bad. The fact, as far as I'm aware of the matter, is that we are the fastest growing UK company this year, probably by quite a big margin. I must reach out to our broker and get the latest stats on that. But I'm pretty damn confident that we are, by a good margin, the fastest growing UK company. And then if you look at the liquidity of the stock, which is only going to get better, all things being equal, then yeah, it's pretty good, because I do my shopping at sort of Tesco's, those sorts of places, and you're looking at us alongside those sorts of companies there. Like Tesco's are obviously going to be above us, I would imagine, in those 100-ish stocks above us. BP, Shell, all these things, Lloyd's, Bank, Barclays, whatever. So if you take it in the context of that, most people will know that you've got the FTSE 100, then you've got the FTSE 250. Add the two together, that's the FTSE 350. So if not on market cap, but on liquidity, it's pretty impressive. Yeah, I'm really pleased to see that.
Yeah, I mean, we've beaten ITV apparently, so
Nobody watches ITV anymore, though, do they?
I don't think we're allowed to say that.
Yeah, some people watch ITV. It's just I personally don't watch ITV that often. Is that better?
Yeah, I can't say it's on my list. Okay, and just the sort of final chart bit I wanted to share today. Again, Crabapple coming up with the stats. That's kind of comparing UK volume to OTC volume. And yesterday OTCQB went live, and look at how the volume shot up. You may not be able to comment on this, but I'm confident that today the OTCQB could actually trade a higher volume than the Aquis main listing. Just looking at that chart and the publicity that's come out in the last 24 hours. You did sort of mention that volume tends to increase over time. So are you thinking there'll be a flippening at some point?
So I think the volume will increase on the Aquis listing and the OTC side of things. Some days it will be less than it was the previous day, because that's the way these things work. But over the long term, I think it will just increase. If you look at things like Metaplanet, for example, with their OTC listing, or even their Japanese listing, actually, it just gets better and better and better. I think we're quite a long way away of saying the volume is getting to that sort of stage. If you look back at us, over these however many weeks it's been, in terms of their consistent sort of lion's share of the volume on Aquis, you know, it's been very, very consistent for a growing period of time. I'm looking forward to seeing whether it does flip, you know, the Aquis volume or not. I wouldn't really want to make a prediction. I wouldn't be surprised if it did, but I don't necessarily think that I need to make that prediction, if that's okay. But yeah, we'll see, won't we?
Sure. Okay, let's dive into some of the questions. So firstly, Michael Saylor and MSTR and a lot of the community analysts that surround that are talking a lot about the sort of 300 trillion bond market and the capital pools that they're looking to target and all that kind of thing. I think people are getting a bit excited about, you know, what the options are for SWC in the UK. Are you able to sort of say which capital markets you're looking at targeting, and maybe what sort of timeline we might be looking at for the adaptation of the business to go into those?
Yeah, so I can talk around it without going into too many specifics. So, you know, my job is to grow the business, you know, as quickly and responsibly as possible across the stated business strategy. If people want to give us capital, then that will assist the business in furthering its objective. And, you know, obviously I believe in Bitcoin, so that's where I hold capital, you know, pending, you know, sort of other opportunities. So I get a lot of people now offering me capital. And I think the best way of everyone thinking about this is most of the people that will be asking the question are shareholders, right? So they need to think, what would they do in my situation, or what do they think is best for the business? Not necessarily what are other people doing, because, you know, my job is to do what's right for the business at the time. So I've declined quite a few offers of capital because I don't think that it's the right capital for us at the moment. And I think I'm probably allowed to say that I find it quite comical that some of the people that I've declined have then come back to me, and then I've declined again, and then they've come back to me. So clearly they're quite keen. So I think the best capital for the business right now is equity. If you look at what we've done, where every single raise has been a better price, every single raise has been a slightly larger, sometimes quite a bit larger amount of money. I think that's the right way of doing it. You know, bonds are ultimately debt. Are we too small at the moment for debt? I believe we probably are. You know, when, you know, the sort of things are going great, you know, everyone, you know, takes risks, and I'm not prepared to take those risks. So, and what I mean by that is, let's say we took some debt, for example, you know, which we may or may not take in the future. But let's say we did that right now. So, you know, it doesn't matter how much. We don't need that for the example, but we take some debt. Now, that makes the business more complicated, because what if Bitcoin, where the majority of our treasury is held, broadly speaking, you know, has a terrible 3 months? What are the terms of that debt? You know, can that debt be called back? You know, can it be, is it left in? You know, obviously it'd be 0%, because, you know, no one in their right mind would agree to any other type of debt for this particular type of business. But there will be strings attached to it. And then the flip side of that is that debt normally converts, you know, so that's why they're called convertibles. So that only works with volume, which we clearly have. But who's in charge of that? So in a corporate finance world, the debt holders are above the equity holders in terms of when things aren't going great, in terms of they get their money back first. But if the debt holders are also responsible for the conversion terms, i.e. it's all agreed at the start, but they don't have to convert until they want to convert, does it then make it harder to raise the next pool of capital? And does that mean that the debt holders will stop you raising the next pool of capital unless the pool of capital also comes from them, thereby making your negotiation position worse? So, I think when we get to a certain size, which is considerably larger, I think you need to look at those sorts of things. But when you've got loads of different offers from loads of different people on loads of different terms, some of which are great, some of which are not so good for us at the moment, I think that's the way of playing it. I don't think I don't think we need to do anything particularly silly. And if you do a debt deal, or not a particularly good equity deal in the wrong way, the company isn't benefiting from near on 100% of that capital, whereas that's my job, to get the company to benefit from near as damn it 100% of the capital. So I think people will like seeing how we're navigating this in the not too distant future. And I suppose, because I'm not allowed to say what these several things that we're doing are, considering doing are, I think all I'd say to people is, please be rest assured that, we've got multiple plans that are pretty exciting, that when I can communicate them, I will. And I'm very much looking forward to communicating those. But please be assured that, I'm running this business for the benefit of the shareholders. Like we say, with the other things that we've been doing so far, so good. And I'm pretty sure we've got a very, very sensible way of doing all these things. So, as soon as I can share those things, I will. But, we look at every option, and we've had a lot of offers from some pretty good names that people will get quite excited about. But if I was looking at that and then I read the terms, I'd be a bit less excited. And so that wouldn't be as good for us. So a bit of a long-winded answer, but hopefully that's some help.
Sure. Okay, so on the sort of topic of things you can't talk about, things you can talk about, UK regulations are pretty different to America and other places in the world. Can you maybe give a little bit of an outline as to what you can and can't talk about? Because I think there's a lot of drive from the community to find out more. They want to know what they're investing in. They want to know what the future prospects are. And in other jurisdictions, people are saying, "Oh, we're going to do this or we're going to do that," and people are hungry for SWC to be doing the same. So yeah, is there sort of any guidelines that maybe you can point people in the direction of? Or...
Yeah, sure. So I can explain it. So the regulations are quite simple. When you're a public company, you cannot treat people differently. So if I tell you something that the market as a whole doesn't know, well, A, that's morally wrong, but B, as far as the rules go, that is wrong. So that's the point of the announcements. You announce stuff and then everyone's got it fairly and people can see that. So the rules aren't any more complicated than that. So if you take what we were just saying about capital, for example, a moment ago, if I told you some of those plans, then, that wouldn't be right because we haven't communicated that with the market as a whole, and we're not ready to communicate those plans at this particular moment in time. So the easiest way for everyone to think about it is that, we want to be as transparent, and I believe we have been incredibly transparent with everything, since we started. But we do have to comply by the rules because they are there for, very, very good reasons. And it's to create that level playing field with everyone. And that's all the rules are. So what you'll see in the fullness of time is, we will put more time and people into showing where we believe we're heading in the future. But because it's quite early days for us, a lot of that sort of forward guidance is stuff that we can't really say at the moment. So that's why we have to say on particular things, we can't really comment on that at this stage. So I do think we are doing a good job in terms of the transparency of where we're up to. In terms of the future, there will be more work that's done on that, over the coming weeks and months and years, so that we can give people a bit more, sort of, I'm not sure whether you're allowed to use the word forward guidance, but that's ultimately what it is. So yeah, that I think that will probably help, but you have to be careful about announcing stuff in the correct way, because that's the right way of doing things. And if I was investing in a company and they weren't doing it in the correct way, then that would be something that I'd be quite concerned about.
Yeah. But something you have spoken about before, and it is getting more and more interest, is initial stake in the ground of 1,000 Bitcoin in 6 months was your hope.
4 months, I said, didn't I? Did I say 6 months? I said Metaplanet did it in 6 months. I want to do it in 4.
Okay, misquoting you. So okay, in 4 months, that's looking promising based on our current trajectory. I think people want to hear what's the next big number. Where are we going from here? With the likes of Metaplanet and AltBG coming out with some longer term, maybe not expectations, but aims. What are SWC's aims?
So I think, without wanting to dodge the question too much, I think it would be fair to expect, say, within the first or after the first 6 months of being a public company, to have some of those longer term plans defined. I think that would be quite reasonable for everyone. So I think that's probably the way to handle that one. Once we pass, all things being well, 1,000 Bitcoin within 4 months, all things being well, I think it would be quite sensible for us to, have that, and i.e. the next target, not the longer term piece. I'm not sure whether, and this will be a really interesting one to watch, sort of in terms of what people say and what we believe and everything. My approach of continuous improvement, as you become bigger and bigger, maybe that isn't, the approach that everyone wants, and I'll then have to have some of those more formal targets. So let's just get through, past the first target, define the next target, and then see that side of things. We do have a sort of, the 10-year plan that we defined right at the outset to try and explain the strategy, because what became very evident is some people didn't understand the different bits of the business and how they all interlink in terms of, the operating business with the Bitcoin treasury policy. So we did do that, but obviously that hasn't got, we're going to get to X, Y, Z. 1, 2, 3 actually would be a better example, wouldn't it? So yeah, I can take that on board, and we can definitely, like we do with everything else, try and improve that side of what we're doing for everyone.
Sure. So are you able to shed any light on the existing institutional investors, maybe naming them if you're able to, or but also, their motivations, what they like about it, why are they interested? Are they dipping their toe in at this stage and, they've got deeper pockets? Just a sort of general expansion on that.
Yeah. So I can't name any names. In the UK, if somebody owns more than 3% of a company, they file a TR1 with the company, and then that's how they become public on the share register. I'm really pleased that we've got some really good support from some good people so far. We've had, when we look at all the different raises, we've had some very, very small amounts, and then some larger amounts from the same people. we've had new names come in on different raises. So if I look at the last raise that we did last week, there was some new names on there that hadn't come in before. One of them, I had a meeting with them earlier in the day when they didn't know that we were doing a capital raise. We made them inside later in the day, and then they participated in it with incredibly short notice. I've had a subsequent meeting with those people again actually yesterday. And so you've got a whole mixed bag really. So I can't name any names. There is a growing part of that side of things, which is good. What we were saying earlier about capital and my approach with equity versus debt. Clearly there's some quite good names that would prefer debt, that have either come in or have said they won't do it at this stage. I had quite a funny call yesterday with somebody that was interested in putting in quite a lot of capital, and on that front, I made it clear, like I did with everyone else, that it's at the market price through equity. They certainly didn't say no. To be clear, they haven't said yes yet. So yeah, we're speaking to all the people. It's definitely getting a bit easier. I think having a very liquid stock and a very visible stock with so much support and the community and everything else that supports it, I think that makes it a bit easier. I suppose for a lot of institutional investors, they can clearly see that we're growing and we're doing most things quite well. And I think we're probably in that point where people can see that, and even though it's quite a short time period, they can see that there is a time period there. So I think that gives them confidence. So I'm pretty pleased with how it's all going in terms of where these people are. Some are in the UK and some are not in the UK. So we haven't got a disproportionate amount of global or UK capital, in the book, which is just how books ended up being, in terms of the cap table. I would like to see more support from UK institutions, to be fair. I would just keep working on them and speaking to them. I had a great call with one of the fund managers yesterday, last week, when we were doing the capital raise, and I was really hoping actually that he would put in a reasonable amount, and that particular one didn't. He understands what we're doing, and maybe he'll support us further down the line. So it's just my job to speak to these people and to explain it, just like I was doing with the IPO and just like I was doing last week. And if it's right for them at that point in time, then hopefully they'll support us. I'm obviously tremendously happy with the support that we got from the retail investors in the UK. That's more important to me than the UK fund managers, like wanting to sort of alienate them. But I would like to see that side of things going. I find it a bit easier, global capital. I think maybe they understand companies like my company a bit more, maybe. I don't know why I find it a bit easier on the global versus the UK institutional capital. But we're, as you can see from the amounts that we've raised, it's pretty good, especially as we're doing it in the right way, as far as I'm concerned, which is at the market price, so that we go back to that level playing field, which is pretty important to me.
Speaking of the level playing field, there's definitely still a hunger from retail to try and get involved in providing capital. You might not be able to say what you are currently planning, UK regulations and all that, but is there maybe a timeline when retail might get a look in again?
Yeah, so there's lots of things that are happening. So, for example, should we move to the LSE, for example, in the future, then retail would be able to support those things then. There's nothing stopping larger retail investors from contacting and saying, should we do a raise in the future if they are classed as a qualified investor. So that probably means at least £50,000 in a single investment. There's other criteria, but that's in terms of taking part in another thing. So there's nothing to stop those people getting in touch with the company and saying, look, if you are going to do a raise, then do that. Retail investors are doing more than one could reasonably expect in terms of creating the liquidity in the stock, and obviously that benefits the retail investors because the share price goes up, and then we can hopefully and then we can raise money, and then we can reset our MNAV and then go again. Yes, in simple terms, if it's a raise and the money comes direct to the company, it's arguably better in a way. But the secondary market is so important because that's the thing that allows you to raise money, and it creates that premium, and then it does reset the MNAV, and then it goes again. So I think everyone needs to look at it holistically and look at the fact that those two things are so important, and that's why the discount model that some companies use is so pathetic, because particularly with a business that's doing a strategy like this, it's basically taking money out of one person's pocket and putting it into the other one, whereas with the way that we do it, it's all fair. So but yeah, I think that's the best thing to do for any larger investors that are classed as sophisticated investors. They can get in touch with the company. We'll put their name on our list. They'll be welcome to participate, not because I don't want the other people participating in it, but because that's what the FCA rules are. And then I think when people see some of the other strategies that we've got in place, I think they'll see how we've managed to come up with very, very good solutions for these sorts of things. And then slightly longer term, but not long term in the grand scale of things, I think retail investors will be able to do what we did with the wrap and things in the past. So there's lots of things that people can do, to help on those fronts.
Thank you. So I believe you're talking at the London Digital Assets Conference next week. Some names have been thrown up. Have you got any plans to meet with Richard Byworth or Jeff Park, being that they're kind of big in the field of Bitcoin treasury companies at the moment, or any other names that you're hoping to meet?
Yeah, so probably have to be careful with how I answer that one, but rest assured that my diary is full around the next couple of weeks anyway. So I wouldn't want to comment on individual people. I don't think that would be good for the company and that side of things. I'm aware of the names that you say, and I'm very much looking forward to the event. I had an email yesterday from the session that I'm talking at, and off the top of my head, I think it was not quite 100%, but probably more than 50% above the capacity in terms of the people that expressed an interest in hearing that. So that's good, because that means that there's more people that want to get into the room than they will allow into the room. So that shows demand. I haven't been through the company names yet to see if any of those are people that I've spoken to yet, or if they're people that would be sort of good contenders from a sort of a future capital point of view. I'm looking forward to talking to them, just like I look forward to talk to everyone else. So it'll be quite good. I've invited one of our lawyers to join me as well, which is maybe a brave move, some might say. But they've been very helpful in the process so far, and I thought it would be quite nice for them to meet some of these people and to hear what I say to people when I'm talking to people about what we're doing as a company as a whole. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and that's Tuesday. I can't remember the time. I believe it might be 11, something like that, in the morning.
So speaking of people, there's been a lot of questions of how is a Smarter Web company going to expand its roster. Is it going to be more people on the website design side so that, it can fund the day-to-day costs? Or is it going to be, I don't know, all the way through to perhaps bigger names that have sort of capital market knowledge or Bitcoin treasury knowledge to help you, because at the moment, not that you're a single point of failure, but you kind of are.
Yeah. I would say, as it was in the video, if I get hit by a bus. Yeah, it's obviously, it's not just about the reason why people are asking the question, though. It's about what's right for the business in terms of key person risk. So it's something that I'm acutely aware of, and that I've got a plan to address it. Obviously, that will change over time as well, i.e. bigger, more people. What I've said to everyone about this is that the most important thing for me is that obviously we get it done pretty damn quick, but I need to find the right people. And one of the things that I was doing when I was in Vegas was I was meeting lots of different people on the capital market side of things, but also with a view of who can actually help with some of this stuff. And I think I'm quite close on some of that. Pretty damn close, actually. And in the sort of the near future, I think people will like how I'm proposing to address some of that. So that's more in terms of driving the business forward and allowing me to communicate with more people by having more bodies, basically. But right from the outset, since before we listed, everything's structured as you would expect. So when people talk about key person risk, they're talking more about the business growth, not in terms of how we work operationally, because how we're structured operationally, because I put a lot of effort into the detail of these things, it's all been designed around exactly what I would want if I was investing in something. So God forbid I die this afternoon, then things like the web design business can carry on exactly as it is. The Bitcoin that we've got is all custodied in the right way, and I can't even take it out if I wanted to, but no one person in the business can do that. So you've got multiple people, a lot of people in different parts of the country / world would have to die all at the same time for that to be a problem. So even though we're a small business with a incredibly low cost base, I'd love to see some analysis of businesses with a £250 million market cap and look at what the CEOs paid, and then look at what the overall costs of the business are. I think we'd probably be the cheapest, and cheapest is good in that example. I think we've done a good job in terms of structuring it as people would want it to be structured. But don't get confused, people, with the key person risk in terms of a business growth with the key person risk of things being structured properly. They're two different things. So that's all fine. The growth is the one that I've got, sort of things at work, and you'll probably be seeing an RNS in the not too distant future on one or two of the things that I'll be doing on that front. So it's a good question to ask, and I was really pleased when I saw that video that came out last night that was identified as a risk, because I'm thinking about these things, and I like the fact that other people are seeing those things.
Great. This is a fun question. Bristol Rovers or Bristol City?
Well, I don't really want to alienate anyone here. So, people get quite passionate about football. My former boss, Stephen Lansdowne, owns Bristol City, and nowadays Bristol Bears, the rugby team. For my entire life, I would not really be that welcome if I said I supported Bristol Rovers. My wife's family, my father-in-law, supports Bristol Rovers, would you believe? So, I wouldn't put it this way. If you gave me some tickets to go to a game, if it's Bristol City, I'd be there. If it's Bristol Rovers, you'd probably get an excuse.
how to say I'm a City fan without saying I'm a City fan.
I wouldn't go fast to say I'm a City fan, but if push came to shove, I would be firmly in the Bristol City camp than I would be in the Bristol Rovers camp. You know, I've got allegiance to them in multiple parts of my history. You know, so apart from obviously my wife's family who support Bristol Rovers, but that's that. I'm more of a rugby fan though. So I actually support Bristol and Bath. I go and watch both of them play a couple of times of the year if I can. But then, you know, even though I live on the outskirts of Bristol, if I had to support one or the other, contrary to, you know, what Steve Lansdown may like me to say, I would support Bath out of the two.
Well, I look forward to an extra Bath derby then.
Yeah.
Back to the serious questions. Are you, when it comes to uplisting, you know, there's been a lot of us that are quite keen on it, although there are some drawbacks to it as well.
Yeah.
Kind of weighing up the pros and cons. Is it a size thing? Is it, you know, the equity raise scenarios? Is there a tipping point, I guess, where it's kind of like, yeah, we've got to go for it? And you know, if you're able to share any of that sort of stuff, what does that look like?
Yeah, so I think the important thing for everyone to understand with moving to a different market, albeit in the same country, is that the company, should they be pursuing such a strategy, wouldn't actually be able to tell everyone until quite near the end of that process. So let's say you started that process, you're probably looking at, let's say, 4 months, maybe 5 months, you know, probably not any longer than that. You know, if you did it properly, like obviously we would, with good advisors like what we've got, you know, and you probably, as a company, you probably wouldn't want to or wouldn't be allowed to say stuff until much further down the road. You know, for the main attraction to me of the LSE is that, you know, Aquis doesn't have passive investment funds, i.e. tracker funds, whereas, you know, clearly the LSE does. So I think, you know, there's a big argument for, if you're a large company, why you would want to be there. I don't think the liquidity thing is something that really holds any weight in the argument. It used to be what everyone used to say to us, you know, when we were starting, but I think we've proved that one wrong. Funnily enough, from a fundraising point of view, on the main market, it's getting better because the FCA are changing the amount of money that you can raise without doing a supplementary prospectus, which will probably tie in quite nicely into the timescales that we may or may not be working towards. The Aquis, the great thing about Aquis is, providing you're a decent company that's got good interest in you, you can raise money without, from not from retail admittedly, but from institutions, you know, really quickly, without any sort of onerous sort of requirements, assuming you've got your capital structure correctly designed, which again, ours was designed by me even before we listed. So you know, we could raise, you know, if somebody came to me with a check for £1.5 billion today, to be fair, I probably wouldn't accept all of it. I'd probably accept some of it and then take the rest when the share price went up by another 100, 200, etc. % because of the reset MNAV type argument. But ignoring that sort of point, if someone turned up with a check for £1.5 billion, I'm pretty confident I could accept that and some more with the headroom that we've got, with the way that I designed it all from the outset. And you couldn't do that on the LSE. So, you know, I think everyone needs to understand the pros and cons of the different things. But, you know, the bottom line is that, you know, are you going to be one of the biggest companies in the UK on Aquis? You're not, are you?
Okay, yeah, I think that kind of clears things up for people. David Bailey tweeted a while back that this is under his Nakamoto hat, that they want to replicate, I think it was Strife, STRF in every jurisdiction. Are there any plans for SWC to sort of enter that preferred share kind of market?
Yeah, I think it's a bit like the convert conversation. So yes, you use all the tools in the toolbox, but at the appropriate time. If you look on MicroStrategy, obviously the example, then they do a lot of those things, but they're the biggest in the world, and they've been doing this for over 4.5 years now. So I think if you look at the other companies like Metaplanet, for example, they do, some of their instruments are related to their equity, but they haven't got the different products in place at the moment. So I think it would be the same as my other plans, that yes, of course, we're thinking all of these things through for the right time. But those would follow those other types of things, because it's if you take a step back from all of this, it is all about capital flows, right? So, would you get a bond fund manager that would want a product like that to invest in a company like us right now? Probably not. Once we're 5 times, 10 times as big, would you get someone to invest in a company like us? Probably. So, that would give you an idea of, when you get past certain milestones, those products are worth having, because unless you've got a demand for a particular product, i.e. a capital demand, i.e. capital flowing, then you don't need that product. So you're best off to think about these things as a company. This is us thinking about these things, but you do the right things at the right time.
Sure. I think I asked you this on a previous episode, but it's come up several times since then. Metaplanet, with their cash secured put strategy for purchasing Bitcoin, so they either get a discount on the Bitcoin or they get a premium on the money that they put up. Is that something that we're SWC are able to do, or and are we doing it?
Yeah, so I've actually got a test that's being run at the moment by somebody that's incredibly experienced in that space. And we've been monitoring it on a daily basis for approximately the last week and a half. It's been a good time to monitor it because Bitcoin's been going up, and then it's come off a little bit today. So it's quite a good real world scenario, because obviously that strategy arguably doesn't work as well actually in a falling Bitcoin price. But you create obviously revenue from the option part of that. It goes a little bit against what a lot of people believe in, which is the smash buy argument, which we don't exactly follow, but we're sort of as close to that within responsible boundaries as one may be. The devil's in the detail with all this stuff. So by doing that strategy, you introduce a couple of things. So one of the things is, what happens if Bitcoin rips when you're looking to deploy? Clearly, that's not good with that strategy. And then the other subtlety is, yes, you create a revenue through the option element, but you also effectively may have different charges for acquiring the Bitcoin when you buy it, whether that's FX charges or just the spread / commission, however they slice it up. The way that we buy all of our Bitcoin is incredibly good from a charging point of view. So if you ever look at one of our Bitcoin buy announcements and you think that the price is, the dollar price is not quite as good or it's better than what it should be, it's because of the time that we've bought it. It's got nothing to do with charges. The charges are incredibly low. So yes, we have got a real world test case being run at the moment. I'm not decided yet because I can sway myself either way, but I'll look at the data at the end. And then once you look at the data, that'll be pretty clear. Obviously, it works to the benefit or it doesn't work. But then the other thing that you have to overlay on that is the risk, i.e. what if that goes wrong when you're doing it? And obviously for for someone like us, the worst thing that could happen is everyone believes in your approach to treasury management. You haven't deployed that capital, which is growing at an increasing amount with subsequent fundings, and Bitcoin rips to the upside. That's worse than deploying the capital, Bitcoin going to the downside, because everyone's aware of how we run the business and what we do with regards to treasury management. And I think I'd be quite uncomfortable with that outcome. So I'm not going to make a decision until we get to the end of that test. But, like almost anything else that people are thinking of, we've either looked at it or we're looking at it so we can try and make the right decisions. So it's a good shout. I believe, and I'm happy to be corrected on this, that Metaplanet only did that in their very early days. If you look at their approach now, and certainly what they say in their presentations, they're very focused on the speed that it takes from the capital to be fully into Bitcoin, or to use Saylor's way of putting it, I always want to be short the dollar. That's what he says. I.e., if he's got cash, he's long the dollar. So I'm not going to prejudge that work that we're doing on that, but I'm sort of more leaning on the no than the yes because of the things that I've explained. So, but I'll try my best to make the right decision and share that with everyone in the fullness of time.
So we've only got a few minutes left. Just wanted to highlight to people about the new merch that's on the horizon. Can you share a kind of where we're at, when people can expect it to land, and all that kind of thing?
Yeah, so it's been ordered now, as of this morning. I have looked at the poll that we did. So for the t-shirts, we've ordered all different designs. For the hoodies, we decided to order the top two designs. So we haven't ordered the rocket, because you can get that in the t-shirt, but that was the least popular on the poll, or certainly was before we joined this call. I suspect that the numbers aren't any different, although we can always check that. So we've ordered it. The people manufacturing it, it's been manufactured in the UK. That will be, that they suggested it'd be about 2 weeks. So then it'll be on the website in 2 weeks' time. And so we'll probably put it on the website, a day or two before we've actually got it, because that's okay. We don't want to take the orders and have people waiting a week or two, because it's better to do it that way. In terms of the caps and the caps, I haven't got the sample yet. I'm assured that I will get the sample any day. I'm hoping that the sample is the quality that I would expect, and then we will order the caps from the people that have made the sample for the cap. If the cap isn't as good, then it's going to be the hoodies and t-shirts will be here first, and then the caps thereafter. So until I see the sample, the quality of the sample, I can't order the rest of it. I went to the place yesterday who are making the t-shirts and the hoodies, so I could feel them in person, because I wanted to feel the quality of the thing and see the printing of something else to make sure that I was happy with that. So yeah, we'll have them in the not too distant future. It's something that I'm very keen on. I know people are keen on it as well. Without wanting to offend anyone, it's not been the top of my priorities, because it's the fun around the edges. But we are getting that done, like we've got everything else done. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing if people sort of want to buy them, and then we'll get them sent out to them.
And then just quickly, if you can maybe round up some of the events or conferences and things that you're heading to in the coming weeks and months, just so that if people are going, they know to look out for you and that kind of thing.
Yeah, sure. So we've got that Digi Assets thing in London next Tuesday. There's a Bitcoin Surrey meetup on Tuesday evening that I'm going to after that. I've got 2 meetings between that on my way to that. So that should be good. There's a potential event that's being organised. I believe it's at the end of June, start of July. that was something that they asked me to speak at yesterday, and that should be quite good. That's very much retail investors are welcome to that, so that will be that's more of a city event as opposed to a Bitcoin event. So that should be good. I was invited to go to Bitcoin Prague, but I couldn't make that work with the diary and my other commitments and the travel side of that. So that was a bit disappointing because I was looking forward to going to that. Vegas was a great place to meet lots of people, as you know. At the end of August, you've got the next Bitcoin conference, which is in Hong Kong, 2 days towards the end of August. Providing you don't mind humidity, that will be a great event. Again, as you know, the production of the whole event in Vegas was absolute first class. So I'm looking forward to that. And then also later in the year, they've got the one in Abu Dhabi as well, which my buddy organises. So I'll definitely be there. There's a few other things that we've got. So thinking slightly further ahead, I can't remember what I'm doing in August, to be honest. But in September, we've got the feast. That should be really good. I believe my little brother's booked a ticket to that as well. So that'd be nice to see him. I don't see him as often as I would like.
I think it's almost sold out, actually.
Is it? Yeah. So it's quite limited, the spaces, but it will be good because the food looks awesome and it'll be a good bunch of people because we all like Bitcoin. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Thank you to Henry for organising that. I'm sure there's other things that are in the diary, but it's sort of, let's get through the next week and then sort of see what we do from there. I'm not very good at planning some of this stuff, but I am getting better at planning this stuff. So that should be good. So yeah, there's plenty going on in terms of those events, but again, I've got to get the balance right. I have to get the balance right between being sat at my desk, doing what I need to do, and then also doing that side of things. And then when other people join the team, some of those things will be easier because then there'll be more people to send out to all these different places. One of the people that will probably come and work with us will, he'll be really great at doing some of that stuff alongside me. So we're getting out to events and we'll get out to more events.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for joining today, Andrew. We've kind of slightly gone over the hour, but really appreciate your time. And I know we look forward to seeing you again in the future, but I know it won't be quite as regular as it started. Just to mention to everyone, please, can you like and subscribe? Can you get the community out there? Can you just generally spread the SWC word? Because that's what's bringing retail in, is getting the word out there. So thanks for all your help in the community, and looking forward to the week ahead, especially 2:30 this afternoon when America come online.
It'd be good.
Yep. And we're back to the normal Friday at 12:30 p.m. next week. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, James.